All right, guys, so we got a new contender who is officially throwing her hat in the ring for the 2024 GOP primary showdown. We got Nikki Haley, who is the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations under the Trump administration, as well as the former governor of South Carolina, who has now officially declared her run for the presidency. So I got a couple different things that I want to show you guys here. First, we have her launch-off campaign ad, which was hilarious for so many different reasons that we're going to get into. Then I got a couple other interviews that she's done real quick on, Fox News and a couple other ones where she basically just admits that she doesn't actually have any meaningful policy disagreements with Donald Trump, who she's trying to challenge for the presidency. And then I'm going to show you guys Trump's absolutely amazing response to her making this announcement, where he just, basically blasts her over the head with, policy disagreements that he actually has. And so we're going to get into all of that. But first, I just want to start with, again, this absolutely amazing campaign ad here where she's basically just jerking off the United States of America as this perfect, perfect example of peace and freedom and democracy and all of that good stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into this.
Railroad tracks divided the town by race. I was the proud daughter of Indian immigrants. Not black, not white. I was different. But my mom would always say, your job is not to focus on the differences, but the similarities. And my parents reminded me and my siblings every day how blessed we were to live in America. Some look at our past as evidence that America's founding principles are bad. They say the promise of freedom is just made up. Some think our ideas are not just wrong, but racist and evil. Nothing could be further from the truth.
I mean, that line is just amazing. First of all, why would you even put that in an advertisement? If you're being accused of being racist and evil, why would you bring that up and then just to be well, that's not true. We're actually not racist and we're not evil. Okay, pinky swear, I guess. I mean, that's just kind of a weird thing to bring up. But I love how she talks about the origins of the United States, the founding of this country, right? And she talks about it as if having honest conversations about the genocide of Native Americans, or chattel slavery, or the Jim Crow era, or the disenfranchisement of women in the United States. She just kind of glosses over all of that, and she's some people want to say that our founding was evil, and it's well, I mean, I feel like if you have even a mildly well-oriented moral compass, then you would be able to look at those things and be yeah, that was pretty fucked up. That was bad that we did that. Maybe we should be teaching people extensively about our history, learning from our mistakes, and all of that, right? You would think that your average person would be able to have that analysis, but it just seems like she's taking all of that, completely glossing over it, and just portraying anybody who wants to have honest conversations about that as, I guess, just hating the country, or thinking that, everybody who supports America is inherently racist and evil or something it's just really lazy. We hear this from a lot of conservatives all the time, where if somebody like Bernie Sanders or AOC, who she just showed in those clips, which is, again, fucking hilarious, because we're talking about Bernie and AOC, people who mostly just push for universal healthcare, the Green New Deal to address climate change, just things like that, ways to improve working class people's lives, just basic stuff like that. And she puts them in there as though they hate the country because they have criticisms of the country. I mean, this is something we hear all the time from conservatives. You'll bring up some flaw with our economy, our political system, our military, something like that, and then they'll just respond by being oh, well, you must hate the United States of America. And it's no, you actually just kind of care about this country, the people who live within it, right? We want this to be a better country, and so that's why we're putting forward ideas to change certain things that aren't working right now for average people. But I guess everybody else, who has that critique is just an absolute hater to the largest degree possible, according to Nikki Haley here. But she continues.
I have seen evil. In China, they commit genocide. In Iran, they murder their own people for challenging the government. And when a woman tells you about watching soldiers throw her baby into a fire, it puts things in perspective.
Okay, again, I mean, listen, it's perfectly fine to have critiques of other governments around the world, China, Iran, Russia, whoever you want to critique. That's perfectly fair game. But she's setting this up, explicitly framing it as a contrast to the United States. And the two examples she just brought up there, literally a minute, less than a minute after just completely glossing over the entire history of the United States, which includes things again, the genociding of millions of Native Americans at the founding of this country. She just completely glossed over that when it comes to America, but then she turns around and has that critique for China as though that never happened in the United States. I mean, again, it's like the contradictions are glaring. They're staring you straight in the face, right? And then she brings up Iran, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I've talked about on this channel the brutal treatment of protesters in Iran, but are you seriously trying to contrast that with America as if we don't have brutal crackdowns on the American people by the U.S. police force? I mean, we have a uniquely brutal police in this country and a uniquely brutal criminal justice system generally. We lock up more people per capita and in a total sense than any other country on the face of the planet, and it's not even remotely close, right? So you want to talk about political prisoners. What's your stance on Julian Assange? What's your stance on Edward Snowden, for that matter? What's your stance on the drug war, for example, where this was the drug war was initially started explicitly to target the political enemies of the Richard Nixon administration? That's not just my opinion. That's coming from top key advisors who were helping to strategize their domestic policy at the time. They've already openly come out and said that all of this drug war nonsense was basically to target their political opponents, right? You had the anti-war left, and you had black civil rights movement leaders, and they explicitly went after that, launched this entire drug war, and millions of Americans have been disastrously affected by the consequences of that. Do you have anything to say about those political prisoners at all? No, it's just America's perfect, USA number one, all of our political adversaries, Russia, China, all of these other countries, they're just horrible, evil, we need to I guess go to war with them, or whatever the fuck she wants to actually do in response to that. But again, just jerking off the United States of America to the maximum extent possible.
Even on our worst day, we are blessed to live in America. I was born and raised in South Carolina, so I have seen the very best of our country. People here threw out the old, tired political establishment and demanded accountability for their tax dollars. Industry reports called us the beast of the Southeast, which I loved. People came by the thousands for fresh starts. Moms and dads held their heads up high. Children learned that it was always
a great day in South Carolina. It's a great day.
It's a great day.
A great day.
A great day in South Carolina. We were strong. We were proud. And when evil did come,
police in South Carolina are looking for a gunman following a shooting at a church in
several
downtown
victims.
Charlotte.
We don't know the severity.
we turned away from fear, toward God, and the values that still make our country the freest and greatest in the world.
Okay, so there was a mass shooting. You responded to it not through any legislation or gun reform laws or anything that could actually prevent that from happening in the future. You just went to church and then, thoughts and prayers. I guess everything's fine at the end of the day. And I also loved how, earlier in this clip, she talks about how she's somehow like trying to posture as the anti-establishment type. I mean, again, this is a person who was a governor for 6 years in South Carolina. She worked under the Trump administration as an ambassador to the United Nations. She's acting as if she's some sort of up and comer like AOC was as a, former bartender coming out of nowhere, and she's not, in cahoots with the upper echelons of the Republican establishment. I mean, it's just complete nonsense, but I can't take any more of this advertisement. Let's just go ahead and move on to some other entertaining things that she's been talking about recently. So this is just a really short little clip that apparently, according to Richard Hanania here, says beautiful, vibrant, graceful, and funny too, unstoppable. I hope he's being sarcastic there. I'm not entirely sure, but this is just one thing that I thought was funny, is that Nikki Haley is really leaning in to the identity politics, which is amazing, because these are the same people who constantly rail against identity politics and make that their whole thing, is opposing woke liberals who use identity politics, which I think to some extent is a fair degree. I think there are a lot of liberals who do use that and lean on it, like Kamala Harris, for example. But the funny part here is that you're a conservative. This is supposed to be the antithesis of everything that you represent, and here's Nikki Haley.
As I set out on this new journey, I will simply say this: may the best woman win.
I mean, again, it's not the biggest deal in the world. I honestly don't really give a shit about it. She also has this on her website. Sometimes it takes a woman, and it's just it's funny to see the hypocritical nature of something like this. That's all I'm gonna say about that for now. But again, she's been really leaning into that side of that, talking about how she's going to use her heels or something to kick back against the left and shit like that. Right? Very weird, bizarre, cringe phrasing that somebody in her inner circles has been telling her is going to absolutely pop off, and that conservatives are going to be eating it up. I have my doubts on that. But now I want to move on to this Sean Hannity clip, which was pretty revealing because obviously she's going to be challenging Donald Trump. She's going to have to address why people should vote for her instead of Donald Trump, who is obviously leading the pack right now. So let's hear what exactly she thinks is the difference policy-wise between her and the leading candidate right now.
I want to take the country with your competitors. Right now, there's former President Trump is the only other candidate for the nomination. We expect many others, maybe even Mike Pompeo, who was on earlier in the program today. Where do you see, if you see, policy differences beyond what you mentioned, which are generational differences? What specific policy areas would you say part with Donald Trump?
What I am saying is I don't kick sideways. I'm kicking forward. Joe Biden is the president. He's the one I'm running against. And what I'm saying is...
That's not true. You are running against Donald Trump first, right? I mean, if you win, then you would presumably be going against Joe Biden, but you're not running against Joe Biden. You just declared your candidacy not for the general election, but for the Republican primary. So it's like, what are you talking about here? And she kind of seems to have stolen an Andrew Yang type of line there, where, you know, Andrew Yang will come out and he's an absolute fucking clown in my opinion, but, you know, he'll come out and he'll say not left, not right, forward, which is just utterly meaningless. And she's just coming out and basically saying, I'm not going to kick sideways, I'm going to kick forward, whatever that means.
Is you don't have to be 80 years old to be president. We don't need to have these same people going back again. We need something new. We need a new generation of fighters. We need people that understand where the American, your average American, is coming from, and we shouldn't be afraid to fight for that. And that's what I'm willing to do. I'm not going to kick sideways. I don't have time for that. That's not my focus. I'm kicking forward. It's all about Joe Biden, and it's all about the people in America winning again.
Okay, I mean, again, that entire clip just there, first of all, Sean Hannity asked her, explicitly trying to exclude the, commentary surrounding how she's a new generation of talent as opposed to Donald Trump, which, again, is absolutely meaningless. Just because you're younger than him doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. It's about what are your actual policy differences, but she doesn't seem to have literally any. I mean, again, he was asking a very specific question there, and all she has to say is, something, new generation, I'm younger, I'm a woman, we can't have 80-year-olds in the White House or something. It's like, what is your actual disagreement? Why are you challenging Donald Trump for this position right now? And she just has absolutely nothing to say there. I mean, it's honestly genuinely embarrassing. And she even repeated the not kicking sideways, kicking forward thing at the end there again, because I guess, somebody again in her inner circles is giving her bad advice and is telling her that this is, going to play super well for the crowds. But now I want to watch this short interview, which I think plays on the same exact idea that I'm getting at, which is that she doesn't seem to have many policies that she's very clear on exactly what she wants from this. So this is just a short 30-second clip on her abortion stance.
Let's talk about abortion for a moment. The senior senator from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, has proposed a federal ban on abortion. Would you sign that?
We need consensus on this. Our goal
consensus on abortion. Would you support a federal ban?
I think not a full-out federal ban, because I don't think that's been put on the table. I think what Lindsey Graham has put on the table is 15 weeks. And I think if we're looking at 15 weeks, what we need to understand is we are not okay with abortion up until the time of birth. And so we should at least decide, when is it okay?
Okay, so, I mean, again, first of all, we need to build a consensus. Well, what does a consensus mean? We have the polling data on this, right? A vast majority of the American people wanted Roe v. Wade to stay in place. So why wouldn't you just say, I think we shouldn't have overturned Roe v. Wade. We should put back those standards. Or if you have some other specific, timeline or, set of policies or restrictions on it, then lay those out clearly. But she's just saying, we need to build a consensus, which, again, is exactly what Andrew Yang does. It just keeps popping into my head, where it's you don't actually stand for anything. You're just I'm going to be in favor of what is popular, I guess, but then they're not even in favor openly of what is actually verifiably popular. They're just super vague about it and won't hammer home. And then at the end, she brings up the near birth abortions, right? That abortions are taking place all over the country right up until the second before you actually give birth, which is just utter nonsense. The only abortions that take place that late in a pregnancy are in super rare emergency situations where the life of the mother is in serious jeopardy, or or there's some massive defect that is going on with the pregnancy where the baby is not going to live. People do not just have elective abortions at 9 months of pregnancy. Okay, it's utterly delusional. She's bringing that up as a straw man because she's bringing up the most extreme example that you could possibly imagine, which really doesn't even happen in the way that they say that it's happening, so that she can turn around and be like, well, I don't believe in this. Well, it's like, that's not the question. We're talking about, what do you believe in, right? And she has nothing to say about it. Okay, so now we move on. Donald Trump responded, and he is getting, he's getting pretty catty out here. Okay, so he sent this out to an email blast to his followers, I guess. So here from Trump: Make America Great Again, 2024. The real Nikki Haley. He says, Hillary Clinton is an inspiration to Nikki Haley. In a 2012 interview with the New York Times, Nikki Haley said, the reason I actually ran for office is because of Hillary Clinton. So I don't know what the context of that clip is. I despise Hillary Clinton, I despise Donald Trump, and I despise Nikki Haley. So I don't really have much more to say about that. If she did take some sort of like a, motivation from Hillary Clinton, then I guess it is what it is. Trump is using this now to smack her over the head with it. But he also says Haley supported Paul Ryan's plan for entitlement reform, threatening Medicare and Social Security. So again, kind of interesting here, right? How, serious is he about trying to defend Social Security and Medicare? We saw this during the, run up to this debt ceiling fight where a lot of Republicans were pushing to get some of these cuts to these so-called entitlement programs. And Donald Trump came out and poured cold water on that and said, nobody in the GOP should be pushing for that. So, maybe he's actually going to be effectively utilizing this against Nikki Haley and against Ron DeSantis. And this is a good position of Donald Trump's. You won't hear me say that often, but he is correct. You should not be trying to push for cuts to Social Security and Medicare. And I think that's going to be really effective in a GOP primary as well, especially against Ron and Nikki. But he says, instead of finding a peaceful solution to the Ukraine-Russia war, Haley has supported sending more American fighter planes to fuel the war. Okay, so I guess Nikki Haley previously said she wanted to send fighter jets to Ukraine, which is, many people would argue crossing that red line that could potentially, lead to an escalation that drags us into the war. I think that's probably a step too far. But, he's hitting her over the head now with her, support for Ukraine and the ongoing Russian invasion. Now, don't get me wrong, Donald Trump is not like a good faith actor in this situation. Just a couple of days ago, he was coming out and saying, if I was president, I would be able to negotiate a peace in, I think he said 24 hours or 48 hours or something like that. I mean, he obviously, doesn't have a legitimate pathway towards peace. He's just posturing right now because he's not in a position of power, right? But he also says Haley is weak on immigration and does not support the border wall. Well, she doesn't support the border wall. She's, basically correct on that. But I have my doubts that she is, quote unquote, weak on immigration. I would think that she is pretty close to Donald Trump on that. But he says Haley did not support a transgender bathroom bill to protect children. Okay, so she's not anti-trans enough. She's not trying to genocide trans people enough for Donald Trump's liking. They say President Trump brought Otto Warmbier back home from North Korea when Obama and others failed. What does this have to do with Nikki Haley? Very confused about the context of this one, but also says Haley flip-flops on 24 race and asked if she would support President Trump if he chose to run. She bluntly responded, yes. Okay, so that's true. We also have this previous statement from Nikki Haley in regards to Donald Trump. She said, we need to acknowledge that he let us down. He went down a path that he shouldn't have. She's referencing January 6th here, I think. And we shouldn't have followed him, and we shouldn't have listened to him, and we can't let that ever happen again. Okay, so here she's saying we can't follow Donald Trump. He's a failed leader. He, stabbed us in the back with all of this, January 6th bullshit that he was pulling, right? So she had some pretty strong critiques here against Donald Trump. But then you go to like the, you go to this Sean Hannity interview, and it's like she won't even say anything negative about him. She's just saying, I'm not going to kick sideways. I'm just going to keep kicking forward and spinning around and doing fucking kicks all over the place or something like that. Completely vague, refusing to even mention Trump's name, really. And, here is a contrast to some of the previous things that she has said about this. So this will be interesting. I honestly can't tell if she's like legitimately thinking that she has a real shot at winning the presidency. Because if you look at the polling data here that we're going to get to, it's not looking good to say the least. But, maybe she's posturing to try to become either, I don't know, Ron DeSantis's vice president, maybe Trump's vice president if they work out some sort of deal for her to drop out or something like that. But I mean, listen, you go to the polling data here from Morning Consult. You got Donald Trump right now 47%, Ron DeSantis 31%. This is a much larger lead for Trump than I've been seeing in a lot of the polls recently, but they've been all over the place, so maybe this is true, maybe it's a little bit closer than that. But point is, I mean, you got Donald Trump up here leading the pack substantially, then you have Ron DeSantis, and then you have everybody else who's not even close, right? I mean, you have Nikki Haley pulling down here at 3%, tied with Liz Cheney. Now think in your head for a second, does Liz Cheney have a single solitary shot in hell at winning the Republican nomination? No, absolutely not. She's polling at the same level as Liz Cheney. Okay, that is embarrassing. So, I mean, maybe she could potentially work this up to, I don't know, in her dream scenario, like 5-6 percentage points or something, but she's not gonna win. I mean, unless like Trump dies or something like that, I guess she could maybe try to pull off a run, but it gets even worse for her because it's not just in the first polling. So this is like who would be your first pick for the presidency, right? She's at 3%. But then if you go down here, second choices where GOP primary voters could migrate, it goes for Donald Trump of first voters, right? The people who support Donald Trump first and foremost. Then they go to Ron DeSantis. Then they go to Mike Pence. Then they go to Ted Cruz. Then they go to Greg Abbott. Then they go to Nikki Haley. So even amongst the Trump voters who she's going to have to pull away in order to actually defeat Donald Trump, they're going to Ron DeSantis. They're going to Mike Pence. They're going to Ted Cruz. They're going to Greg Abbott, who these people haven't even declared for the actual race. And Nikki Haley is coming in here at a very weak, like 4th or 5th place down the line for second choice voters. So, I mean, listen, there you go. There are a couple different updates that we've had with the ongoing GOP sort of civil war that has been taking place since Donald Trump officially announced his candidacy. He gave a new nickname to Ron DeSantis. He's calling him Meatball Ron now, which I think is probably the best nickname that potentially Trump has come up with in his entire political career. Absolutely love that. I really, really hope that he sticks with Meatball Ron because it's just so stupid and honestly like hilariously silly. But, I hope that he sticks with Meatball Ron and we continue to see these shots fired across the bow. But at some point, Ron DeSantis, if he wants to run, he's going to have to enter and he's going to have to do it soon. We're potentially going to have, ghouls like Mike Pence and neocon freaks like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, who literally in an interview the other day that I just watched was calling for Edward Snowden to be put to death and a whole bunch of other crazy shit. So we're going to have a whole cast of people who are going to be very easy to demonize because to a large extent, I think most of them are actual literal demons. But this is going to get interesting. We're seeing obviously a lot of shots being thrown around, and I will keep you guys updated as we continue covering this.
Everyone is saying good politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying